Hello, it's John, Solo Pod. It's First Things Foundation, Heavy Things Lightly. Today, a quick look at a video because I wanted to cheers and say, after a time abroad, trying to work on our projects, and then also taking a fine couple to go see Georgia, which I will do from time to time. I learned a lot on my way back about the nature of relationships in crazy foreign countries built on the chassis called the ancient Christianity. And then I came back and I saw this video. And today I look at the video and then we talk about it and how it ties in with old world things and new world things. That's today on Heavy Things Lightly. Gagi Marjos. Yeah, guys, so I'm drinking, this is a Georgian cognac that was given to me by a friend there, a new friend named Sandro, who was a Tamada. And he was a unique, he was sort of like a young stud Tamada. And usually they're old and gray like me, but this was like a young stud Tamada. And well, I'll just let you know that the people that were visiting with me were, let's call them older, like a lot older. And the young stud Tamada kept referencing his sex life. And yeah, it was pretty interesting. And it was fantastic. And from this perspective, it was watching a clash of like sort of a proper Canadian conservative Catholic worldview, and then this young Georgian guy who was anything but traditional, but also super cool. He was like the most interesting man in the world. And then all of a sudden he was saying stuff that I'd never seen Tamada say. That is, I came back from that and sitting here, I was going to not really talk about that, but I don't know. You got to talk about what you talk about. And so Heavy Things Lightly, it started heavy or scary. Maybe it was scary things heavily. But that happened, and I'm not even saying some of the words he said. And Sandra, if you're watching this, I love you. That's not what we're talking about today. I want to play a video. It's from X, where I currently reside and do not post often. And on X, this video popped up. It's a guy named Ilya Sutskever. He's a let's call him a technological savant who's also apparently supposed to be wise. And so University of Toronto put him on stage and he said this stuff.
Maybe not so slowly, AI will keep getting better. And the day will come when AI will do all the things that we can do. Not just some of them, but all of them. Anything which I can learn, anything which any one of you can learn, the AI could do as well. How do we know this, by the way? How can I be so sure? How can I be so sure of that? The reason is that all of us have a brain, and the brain is a biological computer.
The brain is a biological computer. This is how he can be certain that AI will be able to do everything we can do. Other than, I'm going to use the word, other than that's retarded what he just said, he's like wrong. The AI cannot do this one thing that you and I can learn to do, which is love. It can't. It can't. But let's let him finish.
That's why. We have a brain. The brain is a biological computer. So why can't a digital computer, a digital brain, do the same things? This is the one-sentence summary for why AI will be able to do all those things. Because we have a brain, and the brain is a biological computer. And so you can start asking yourselves, what's going to happen? What's going to happen?
Basically, it's an issue with our anthropology. The reason this guy, and you may have seen him on X, is utterly wrong is because his anthropology is wrong. And so how do I know this? Like, he knows stuff about the brain. The good news is I have a podcast and I'm allowed to say stuff into it the way he is at University of Toronto, and then we're all allowed to say stuff. The bad news is there's so many people saying stuff that no one knows where to go. Well, here's the deal. if you just let yourself go to history, you just let yourself go to history. And if you can in any way just give yourself up to something like the arc of human telling, the telling of who we are, there's never been a telling that makes us our brain. That's not a telling in history. That's not a way to be told about your being. And what these guys do constantly, and the reason they're not to be trusted is because of their anthropology, because of what they say we are. They leave out the theos. Theos is left out of the theanthropology, which is actually the definition of who we are. In other words, we have divine parts, and parts is the wrong word. We are fully divine and fully human in the same way as our creator. Now, if you are dismissing that anthropology, that's cool. We can do that all day long. But if you don't start with the presupposition that a human being is more than its mammalian synapses, more than its biological computer chip, then you reach conclusions that AI can do anything that we can do, because we know that's not true. If my anthropology is right, we know that the AI will not be able to love. It will fake love. In the same way I fake God's love for me, I pretend to do it. The AI will do it. Here's the difference, is I am actually capable of uniting with God on some level and being like God. That's told to me by my story, my narrative of who I am. And that comes from the church. And so you have to decide whose anthropology you're going to work with. And I saw this with Weinstein too, Eric Weinstein in his talk with Tucker Carlson. You could see that they had a different anthropology. I was recently talking with Justin Brierley. He and I got into this at ARC about the anthropology of mankind, which is directly tied to, right, the ecclesiology of the church. In other words, one reason that you see Eucharist or communion be lifted out of and removed from a Sunday service is because there's an erosion of the proper anthropology of what a human being is, where the fact that we are capable of communing with God, being one with God, right? Going all the way back to Palamas and the big debate about energies and essence and everything. I don't want to get into it because I'm not like a pro at it. But what I'm trying to say is, soon as the argument went that we really can't be unified with God, then the anthropology started to change. Or a better way to say it is the anthropology started to change with the argument of Palamas between East and West about who we are at our core. And it's changed all the way into what we have today, which is that there is no divinity within us, that we are not of that ilk. We are not of God's ilk. And so when I hear these computer guys, what I am reminded of, and this is the reason I'm doing this podcast, is all of the things that I've acquired and that you've acquired, and we've all acquired out of the womb, in the womb, which is the image of total union. You were one with your mother, yet not. Right? God was one with us and yet not. Right? A seed is one with the soil and yet not. They're both and always. So I'll say that again. We are both and always. And these cats, this Ilya character and the guy who replaced him, OpenAI guy who was replaced, I forgot the story, but they were all in cahoots with trying to create AI. The video you saw is of a guy whose anthropology is incorrect. Now, we've made a decision as a culture to say that his anthropology is correct. Or let's put it differently. We've been making a decision slowly over time, we Westerners, that his anthropology, that we are but like a computer chip. Our brain is what we are. Our brain, our biological computer chip is who we are. That decision has been made again and again since Descartes. And that decision has ended up in evolution, and that decision has ended up with this moment in time where we have to actually decide again. This is what postmodernism is what our anthropology is. So a lot of people are going to argue postmodernism is this, postmodernism is that. And this guy who runs this foundation, you listen to the podcast right now, who's wearing a Mets hat, who I would not trust. But from my experiences living overseas and from my experience at the table in our restaurant, watching people try to commune with each other and understand each other, and there's a good word, and compute one another. They're trying to compute. You can see that their chip that this guy loves, that he uses to define who we are, their chip cannot process something happening at the table, or what happens when someone gives their life for another, or what happens when someone lives their life for another, what happens when people get married. The computer chip can't process this. And I see it. And that's why I wanted to do this podcast. This is an emergency podcast about this guy, Ilya. And go on X and you can find it. Is if we keep going down this road, and Jonathan talks about it, Paul Kingsnorth, hey, cheers to those guys. If we keep going down this road, we can never, ever, ever get out of the problem. It's not possible. There has to be what I would like to call a reformation of Christianity. The Reformation is called orthodoxy. So people are like, oh boy, so this is the whole point. He's giving us it's a preacher moment. No, it's not. Orthodoxy is what is missing from the conversation about who we are. Not because Orthodoxy is the right church, it's because Orthodoxy has never abandoned the Christic anthropology. It remains true. So nobody's bad if they're not Orthodox. The problem is they're not fully accessing the anthropology. And when you do that, when you lack a total access to the anthropology, when you can't actually even know what's being taught, eventually you're going to teach a different anthropology, which will teach and create an entirely different culture. Done. Over. And that's where we are. You can't recover what we had by reteaching the bad anthropology of the Enlightenment and the Protestant Reformation. No offense. Catholicism, too. So now you're like, I thought you were running a nonprofit. Why are you giving us all these opinions? Here's why. Because I'm just telling you the things I'm trying to put words on are expressed entirely through the Spirit at a super table, at a dinner in West Africa, when you're sitting around the bowl, at a super in Georgia, at all these places called old. That's what this podcast is about. There is a spirit present that we in the West are now trying to recapture. And you know how I know? Because we keep selling out these tables. It's an expensive ticket in Greenville. Greenville's not filled with the richest people in the world. They keep coming. There's a spirit let loose at the table, one of vulnerability, one that starts in vulnerability, but it ends in total love. And that thing, when properly let out by the Tamada and the people at the table, then that thing is the leftover, right, in the math equation. It's the thing left over that actually makes the math equation possible. So if you're a mathematician, if you're that kind of mind that hates when, there's a remainder, the remainder makes your brain possible. So you should allow the remainder in your life. It's called the Spirit. And during the week of Pentecost, where there is no fasting, we should remember the Spirit. That is my podcast today. I don't know if Andrew put the commercial in, but I'll put it in right now. Guys, go become part of our eBay store. You can sell stuff online. You can sell whatever you want online. This little person, Nicola, who I happen to be related to, or who runs our eBay store, she'll sell it for you. Well, you give her the info, she sells it for you, and then you ship it. By the way, we're having events this year. October 24, 25 in Greenville at the restaurant, Art of Tamada, with more like a music festival. Tickets coming out soon. But save the date. Save the date for November 6, 7, 8, 9. Because it is confirmed. Jonathan will be coming. Mr. Pajot will actually spend the weekend with us. As will Andrew Gould, expert architect and philosopher. Neil will be there with Kate, and it's just good stuff. That's in November. Who loves you guys? This is Heavy Things Lightly on a random overcast day in Greenville. Who loves you? Thank you for supporting First Things to your work. Gagimarjos.